What was ruined for you because so many people started doing it? Thrift stores. They got trendy. So all of the ones around are higher priced than regular stores. Defeats the purpose. Yard sales and estate sales as well. Shows like American Pickers make everyone think they're selling amazing antiques and collectibles now. Instagram destroys a lot of beautiful photography spots. Open bracket. I remember I went to Petra a few years back. Absolutely one of the most breathtakingly beautiful places I've ever been to. I did this super long hike that goes up to this monastery with a beautiful view. Unfortunately, there was an Instagram model already up there with a professional photographer taking photos. We were yelled at multiple times for coming too close because we wanted to see this view that we walked 3 hours for. Completely ruined the experience for me and I deleted my Instagram account that day. Our parents had a nice summer cabin on a peaceful mountain lake. The water was pure and perfect for fishing or swimming. Neighbors were far apart, we rarely heard a sound. Then, the lake caught on and people started buying up every square foot of available property. The pine trees were cut down and big houses with docks dominated the landscape. Now, there's no quiet. Motorboats roar by at all hours and smell of gas and oil has replaced the fresh scent of pine trees. The fish have died off due to the polluted water. There was an off-road spot up near a lake in the mountains of California, I think, that had the same problem. No one drove there and then everyone drove there. The problem is that most people weren't packing out their human waste. Because of this the lake started getting the bad bacteria to the point that you couldn't even swim in the thing let alone drink it. I think the Forest Service started rationing permits and requiring packing out waste. A lot of off-roaders were angry about it. The more reasonable ones understood their impact was detrimental to the local environment and stayed away. I can remember when YouTube didn't have advertisements that popped up in the beginning and midway through videos. Thank you, millions of people, for making YouTube the commercial, monetized machine that it is. I binged all of the Vlogbrothers in like 2012 or 2013 and I thought about doing it again this year but then I remembered. So many ads. All these videos are 4 minutes or shorter so an ad, or 2, before each one is too much for me. Game development. Each time I see one of these crappy mobile game ads, my faith in humanity gets closer to negative numbers. A Song of Ice and Fire. The books that became Game of Thrones. I feel like in the absence of that show and its massive fan base, before the end, Martin would have finished the books and I could have totally moved on. Instead the show took off, became the story, and then he let other guys finish it for him. Totally ruined it. TBH. The author of A Song of Ice and Fire had no choice but to let the Game of Thrones finish it for him. The series had to continue on HBO and he hadn't moved on from his writer's block. Wanted to name my future child Ragnar since that was my grandfather's name. Then Vikings came along and everyone would think that I named my son after the main character. Edit. Jesus Christ. This blew out of proportion. This is not a huge problem for me of course. I just like being a little bit dramatic. Thank you all for taking your precious time commenting on this. It means a lot. In high school I wore a leather jacket, not for style or anything. It was just the jacket that I had. And it happened to be leather. After a few years, biker jackets became a trend. And the school decided to put a ban on them for some BS reason. I think promoting gang culture was the excuse they gave. So I had to go and buy another jacket for no real reason, when the one I had been wearing for several years previously was still perfectly fine. Going for a walk. I used to walk along a nice quiet section of a river every day I had off work. Then quarantine hit and suddenly the path was crowded with people and my chill walking route was ruined. Same. The arboretum by my house never had more than a dozen people there on the weekend and now the parking lot is full by noon on a nice day and people are lined up waiting to get in. There was a time where Toy Story characters at Walt Disney World would playfully go limp if you yelled Andy's coming. However, I can't stress enough that they do not do this anymore. Too many funny guy jackasses demanding it constantly, and it really wasn't safe for the character performers. Posting on AskReddit. This place is now filled with bizarre or overly specific questions. And that's disregarding the usual sexy sexxes of sexxit. I began a sourdough starter last December. Suddenly in March I couldn't find flour in stores. Oprah Winfrey starved to death. And I haven't begun a new one now that flour is back in stock because I feel like the copycat. Just for your information, you can freeze and revive sourdough starter. Every year or so. I'll put a couple cups into a baggie and toss it in the deep freeze. I have resurrected Igor a few times after accidents with a batch from the cryo chamber. There's an annual air show in the town where I live with all kinds of plane displays. I first started going to see it about 18 years ago. Then it was free to go onto the beach or the promenade and watch the planes. There was a small corporate arena but mostly just relaxed families. Fast forward to recent years and the air show has a higher profile and bigger attendance. The whole beach and promenade area is fenced off for the air show weekend, which is a public space all of the rest of the year, and you have to pay around $10 per person to get in. You can see some planes even outside that, but most of the main displays are hidden by the fence. There are loads of corporate activities as well. I miss the air show like it used to be. Driving. Initially, it was so cool hurtling towards places in a 1-ton death machine. Then I found out how annoying traffic is. I remember as a kid being so excited about the prospect of driving. After a few years in driving, idling really, in jam-packed freeway traffic you wish you had some other way of getting places. My grandfather worked in a family-run fish farm. There were small ponds next to it where I learned to fish both with my grandfather and an old man who didn't have grandkids. It was quiet. There were trees, it was really peaceful. I used to go there on my BMX and spend the whole day there and sometimes got to feed the fish. Then the owner decided to sell and the new one decided that it was time for this place to be more attractive and make more money. He installed a Coke vending machine. And 3 cabins. One selling all sorts of ice cream. Another burgers. Sandwiches and fries, and the last one fishing related stuff with ads all over the place and music. At some point there were more people coming but the place got dirty as it was poorly run and the whole place died. Now it's only an industrial fish farm and I hate it every time I go. Going up into the mountains. Anywhere near Denver is loaded with trash now. Toilet paper all over the place. Human feces and animal feces everywhere. People are awful. I do take solace in the fact that if there ever were an apocalyptic scenario the woods would kill most of these people rather quickly. Living in the outdoors is nothing like weekend camping. I used to go walking and stop on this ridge where I could sit totally undisturbed and watch the sunset, look at the stars, but since COVID hit, more people have suddenly started going for walks and have discovered this perfect spot. The peace is gone. Open bracket. Star Wars. People I knew that hated it or have never seen it suddenly claimed they grew up with it and became aficionados. Star Wars does have a divisive fan base, but it's mainly between the old school and Disney fans. Disney did alienate fans like myself when they decided to trash like 30 years worth of novels. I have like 40 books back at my parents' house that aren't canon anymore. And look. The prequels were pretty bad movies, but the Disney movies have been terrible by and large. I will give Disney credit for The Mandalorian. It's the best thing that has happened to Star Wars in years. National parks in the US. Worst thing for some parks was COVID. Nothing else to do. Everyone flocked to the parks. Best thing for some parks was COVID. Some parks restricted full access to thin out the crowds. I can only imagine what a zoo Yosemite would be like without COVID restrictions. Back when I was in school for the week before Christmas break I would wear a Santa hat. For years barely anyone else did and I was well known as the one with the Santa hat. But one fateful year this group of what I'll call the trouble kids wanted to get in on my hat action. And so they all started wearing hats and soon many other people were too. Our school doesn't allow the wearing of hats, but they didn't care if just a couple did. But because a bunch of people now were and many of the trouble kids were messing around with them too much, the school put a hard ban on them, ruining my Santa hat escapades. Going to house EDM festivals. Used to be filled with people who genuinely love the music. Then the music became mainstream and now it's filled with 18-year-old wannabe Instagram models and frat brothers. I'm just waiting for the genre to become uncool again so that I can enjoy it in peace. Seriously though, the community has become so unfriendly over the past few years. I used to love going to raves because of how kind and accepting everyone was at them. But I think people are getting into it for the drugs and partying these days and not the love and kindness aspect of rave culture. This probably isn't what you were looking for. But for me, talking about mental health issues. It feels like everyone claims to have some mental health issue they're dealing with. Everyone has depression and anxiety. It feels like it's become some kind of a personality trait and identity for some people. It makes me question if what I'm going through is actually a problem or I'm just being dramatic. eBay. When I first started using it, you could find stuff that were insanely good value. Stuff I could buy from eBay, pay post package and still sell at a profit to the shop I worked in at the time. Then it got popular because of that amazing value and suddenly it's just another storefront and the only things that appear to be great value are those that are actually fraud or similar. I watched the 100 from the beginning until like season 4 when it started to suck. And at that point the fan base had grown so much that it evolved into DCK writing the show even if it did some really stupid shit and I just didn't even feel like I could talk about what was good and what wasn't. The 100 burned through every possible plot every season. And I am going to admit I watched every single season because of how absurd it kept getting. I kept telling myself okay, surely things will get wrapped up nicely soon, and it never did. It was my guilty pleasure over the last few years. When I was younger my family used to go swimming at the quarry down the road from our house. It's a really nice spot where you can't see any houses or hear the road and the water in the swimming hole part was always really clear and nice. But now too many people use it. Anytime you go there's always other people there and the water isn't as clean anymore from all the people dumping garbage in the water. Used to really like photography growing up and got my first DSLR camera as a birthday present. Then Instagram became big and everyone became iPhone photographers, so in the end, I didn't even end up trying much. Any video game really. But I will specify Animal Crossing, Splatoon, FNAF and GTA 5. Too many people playing only brings in the worst. Listening to High Hopes by Panic. At the disco. Just Panic. Overall for me, after Too Weird and Dallin leaving, it just hasn't been the same. Especially since Dallin helped write demoed around half of that album. BTW, there's Dallin's demo copy of Far Too Young to Die somewhere on YouTube. All of Panic's new stuff is very much in the pop with 15 different producers vein of music. Anyway, I'd cow is Dallin's new band, and if you like Too Weird, you'd like it too. When I was little, me and my friends came up with this game. We would make little villages in the dirt patches in the grass at my school. Like we would each have a stick that was us and we would make our own villages, build houses out of sticks and leaves, and trade with each other. Then I had to switch schools. I didn't have any friends at this new school and decided to play Stickman Village by myself. Then out of nowhere a kid comes over and asks if she can play. I say sure and thought I made a new friend. Fast forward a few minutes and most of the class is surrounding me and trying to play. They all completely destroying each other's villages and yelling and stuff. It's supposed to be a calm, peaceful game, but no, they didn't want to listen. I get overwhelmed very quickly, so I yelled at the all to be quiet, which made them all shut up real fast. Cause out of the time I had been there I hadn't spoken very much. I then continued to yell at them and said a bunch of stuff I probably shouldn't have. Then I started crying and ran off. Never spoke to any of them again. Lego. I'm an full adult fan of Lego. I mostly just buy individual parts to make my own custom stuff. I started joining a lot of Lego Facebook groups lately, and at first I was excited to see so many people interested in a hobby I love. But over time I realized the vast majority of fools these days are people who just buy sets and brag about which ones they own. Only a minority of people make custom things now. And on the topic of Lego sets, that's just another commodity that has taken off in the scalping markets lately. All my Facebook groups are full of people either complaining or bragging about not owning some stupid Star Wars set. Scalpers buying up loads of them thinking they're going to quintuple in value over 2 years or something. Honestly, I might get downvoted for this, but watching anime, I just want to make it clear that I don't hate anime. I have watched a few and read a few mangas. This was about 2 years ago though. I don't watch anime anymore just because I don't really feel like it. But half my class has suddenly starts to watch anime after saying they don't like it. And they just started to only talk about anime. And they always do these cringy things like saying one of the character's lines or shouting pretending to do one of the character's abilities, which just became really cringy really quickly, and it kinda ruined it for me even though I don't really watch anime anymore. CS GO. When I started playing, random people would be really nice and helpful in voice chat teaching callouts and strategies. Eventually, the game got popular enough that toxic people overran the game and ruined all the fun. This is a problem with all popular competitive video games though, not just CS. There was a weeping willow growing along a creek. Between the tree, a low wall, and several large rocks, it created a tiny little grotto. I would sit there and read or journal or whatever else introverted high school kids do while sitting under a tree. It was my secret special spot. Then one day I saw some beer cans and cigarette butts behind my favorite rock. Then a few months later it was half a dozen empty cans of whipped cream and some graffiti on the rocks. Then a while after that, heroin needles and a giant turd. It kinda ruined the serenity of the spot. I haven't actually been, but any kind of joy I'd probably derive from climbing Mount Everest would most likely be squandered and spoiled. Trash and rubbish. Bottleneck queues in the death zone. Narcissistic fantasing from people would otherwise have no business climbing mountains. Most of the haul is brought up my Sherpas anyway. And they also fix all the lines. Liking nerdish tea as a girl because the backlash to the pick me, not like other girls types, has made people assume I'm looking for attention if I talk about it. Like, no. Let women enjoy this stuff. Dabble in it. Get the trivia wrong. Wear the merch. Love it to bits. All of it. Without asking who we're trying to impress. Going to New Orleans. Yeah, it's always been a party city, but it was absolutely thick with culture. Now it's trendy and mostly thought of as just a place to party. The culture and history of the city are completely overlooked by most people interested in visiting. I took a 16-hour trip on a Greyhound bus to stand outside Anne Rice's house on First Street because of a book I read. I felt the presence of God in a church there. I've eaten the cheapest, most delicious food you can imagine. I've danced with heroin addicts in the rain to live jazz. There's a little deli in the quarter inside a bodega that makes pecan pie that is life-changing, and they're open all night. Boobs and alcohol are the least interesting things about that city. Video games. I feel like mainstream has really gotten its teeth sunk in. I see younger generations of kids trying to become someone on Twitch. It's kinda gross how social media has blended in the gaming environment. Numbers, clout, bathwater. All that shit wasn't so prevalent in the gaming space. Over the past few years it's steady become to norm. Great content has come out of it, but I'm sick of seeing the same group play Among Us or the next one big game over and over. My hometown. It's a tiny little mountain town with nothing there that I legit heard people refer to as the armpit of the earth. It's now a touristy hotspot for camping and hiking, and I spend my Sunday afternoons after they've all left to go back to the city cleaning up garbage from the trails they've carved into the earth. FCK Instagram. Gaming. Used to love my board games. D&D night. COD games like MTG. Then geekdom and nerddom became this weird mainstream thing. Had people turning up to game nights, which we had at a local gaming store, that had no idea what they were doing. I was okay with teaching them at first. Then more came. It stopped being me and my friends playing a game we all enjoy to 3 randos and some guy that'd read a wiki on how to play getting pissy that he was losing. I lost a lot of joy for the things I used to love. I still DM and play D&D, but I have a collection of board games and MTG cards just sat there. Gathering dust. Edit. Spelling. Stranger Things. Watched it the summer it came out, 2016, and had good fun. Then that fall everyone and their mom got into it and it slowly ruined it for me. Like, it's a good show, but it's far from the best show. One of my friends said season 3 was better than Breaking Bad. Like, dude. If you want to have less new stuff entering the category asked here, stop upvoting creating those what underrated unknown websites should we all know? Kind of threads that reach the front page every 2 weeks. Just search for it on the subreddit search tab. Thanks. My tattoo. I got a 5-pointed black and white star tattoo on my left shoulder. I loved it and had a lot of compliments on the design for about a year. Then the emo scene hit pretty hard and everyone who'd ever thought they were slightly emo had that tattoo on them somewhere. Cosplay. What started as a fun way to immerse yourself in a fandom and express creativity and personality is now a toxic well of cliques and bullies that thrive on money, competition and lewds. Avatar: The Last Airbender, just a little bit. I grew up with it, like so many others. But after seeing it become this huge trend it kinda makes me get sorta tired of it. All the basic other girls with their cartilage stubs and infinity signs ruined tattoos and piercings for my high school self who was trying to be different. That said, I'm genuinely glad that tattoos and piercings are becoming more accepted in general. Making beats music production. I was teased for simply making beats in school. Now everyone has a shared screen and Discord servers of them making yeet trap beats. Honestly, politics, once you learn how propaganda is spread on the net, online political discussion becomes pointless. Essentially everyone thinks they are some kind of Neo V for Vendetta wannabe who thinks they know the truth. It's hard to have a proper civil discussion with that kind of crazy. Thrifting. I'm glad that people seem to care more about the environment and consumerism. But as someone who grew up poor, and, with the exception of underwear, got literally all my clothes from Goodwill and the Salvation Army, I'm so annoyed by how trendy it has become. I would be mocked and bullied relentlessly for my old clothes. Don't donate your clothes unless you want to see my name wearing it. It got really nasty. They would specifically throw away clothes rather than let dirty people wear them. And now those bitches are on Instagram talking about sustainability. Baby Yoda everywhere. I can't f***ing tolerate it anymore. I love the concept of the child and it was really nice in the show. But it's just f***ing everywhere. Plushes. Figures. Toys. That horrible Lego set. Awful drawings, you name it. It's there. And I can't bear its face anymore. I even had to leave the Reddit community. Because it was just Baby Yoda posting with terrible drawings. Also, I haven't seen season 2 yet. So no spoilers please. The Titanic. I was an avid little Titanic historian starting in 1st grade, age 6. When the movie came out when I was in 5th grade, age 10, I was so excited. But then my weird little interest became so popular. Everyone and their mom were all about the movie. Hawaiian shirts. I think people are done with them now. I used to wear them because it would bother my employees so much. They said it made me look old or like I manage a Trader Joe's. Cyberpunk hype. It was doable until just before E3 2019, now it is just overdone, emo. So every time I see it now I get less excited for it. Which is a shame because it looks really cool. Bourbon. Used to love drinking Blanton's and getting the one-of-a-kind dipped bottles that Maker's Mark put out for events, but now, the waiting lists, the lotteries, the sudden increase in bottom range bottles, the overpriced tickets for charity raffles with one bottle as the prize. It's just not as fun. Camping. Dispersed or in campgrounds. Even before this year it was way too crowded. Too many dispersed spots way up in the hills have been trashed by a shats leaving garage and destroying nature. People abusing the lands get gates put up and roads closed off. There's several roads that I used to be able to get to for years that are now gated or completely closed off. Campgrounds are packed and super noisy. So I don't even bother anymore unless it's during the week or it's the off season. There was a nature trail that was pretty secluded and I would go there all the time to get away from people. Eventually it was bought out by a nearby university and converted into a walking area. It kinda defeated the whole purpose of me going there once droves of people started swarming in. There is a spy themed bar restaurant in my hometown that did New Year's around the world. It started at 2 PM, local time, with a New Year's celebration in Moscow, their midnight. Each hour you would celebrate again in the next city, moving west, until you reached London. Around 7 PM, local. Champagne, drink specials, and appetizers themed with each city. Only $10 cover. Could have a great New Year's and be home before the amateurs. Fast forward 3 years and the cover has skyrocketed and people are showing up with their kids. Decided at that point to just do adult New Year's. Great dinners with 2 other couples at one of our homes. Lots of wine. And home before 10. Playing Animal Crossing. I feel like all of the sudden exposure has brought up the worst people. Open bracket. I don't know if this counts, but I met these people who were so obsessed with My Hero Academia. I can't even say anime because that's the only one they watched. They would call each other the names of the characters like Todoroki and Kirishima. It was so annoying and cringe that I dropped the anime completely. They made me ashamed to say I even like anime. My sister and I got those craft kits where you weave plastic string to make keychains. We loved it and would make them during lunch at school. The popular kids thought we were weird for doing something so boring, but suddenly, a week later, they were doing it and the whole school thought they'd started the trend. It took all the fun out of it. Golfing. Used to be respectful people out there. Knew how to play the game, understood the etiquette. Practice the game, took time to hit the range. Repair divots and ball marks. Let you play through. Etc. Now you have every meathead out there thinking they're Tiger because the new driver go boom boom. No respect. No understanding of the other parts of the game. Can't even fix a friggin' ball marks. Playing the back tees. Racing all around with their golf carts. Taking 20 minutes to look for the ball all while shooting 130. Lol. Quoting Napoleon Dynamite. Watched that movie with my brother and my best friend on opening night and we had the best inside jokes. Then around the time we started to get over it, the movie suddenly blew up and we had to listen to everyone else start sharing the quotes with us. Bandwagoning dead rappers. I know everyone here will share deep things. But this pissed me. There's nothing wrong with being a fan of someone after their death because you found them and think they're good, but people listen to sad ones and they're like, dude, X is my greatest inspiration. I'll never forget him. I'm not kidding, this is literally what the dude said. Rant over lol. Almost every website app ever. They start cool and great to use, but the more people join and the more shitty it gets with all the advertisements and shitty people using THR services the wrong way. The old internet was a platform for thought-provoking, in-depth, unique writing and creation. Today it's been overtaken by clickbait articles optimized for SEO. There are so few platforms left where you can find old-style interesting content. I would listen to straight up rap and also some hip hop. Then TikTok took off. And songs I liked for the lyrics and flows. People would start liking cause there were funny dances that made no sense, but were made with the song. So everyone would play 15 seconds of my favorite songs. But there was a 15-year-old girl dancing to them. Also, some of those songs seriously should not have thousands of 14-year-old girls dancing to them. Like, I swear they have no clue what they actually talking about in the song. Literally any popular song from a movie. Let It Go. You're Welcome. The Greatest Showman. Etc. Close bracket. All amazing music that quickly got excruciating cause people would not stop singing it. People used to think I was weird because I would watch serial killer docs and read forensic books when I was in middle school. 16 years ago. Damn, I'm old. Now it's a normal, cool thing to do. Listening to certain songs. I'll listen to it for months and then it will be on the radio and everyone will be saying OMG. Have you heard their new song? One song had been out for 2 years before it blew up on the radio. There's a long walkway that hangs above the shoreline in my town that used to be a nice place to take a walk or relax on. Now it's a pain to go down there because teenagers and college students realized that it's a great place to dive into the water. It's now constantly crowded and there's a movement wanting to destroy the walkway because 3 idiots decided to jump off a 30-foot drop while it was low tide and only one survived. No one in particular, but I find a lot of small YouTube channels a lot and fall in love with the content because the creators are doing what makes them happy. Flash forward and they get famous and suddenly stop posting genuine content and a disconnect starts to form between the once quaint base and the creator. Always a bit sad to see happen. YouTube channels. This isn't true for all YouTube channels. But there are a few. A few years ago, these channels were good and had maybe 1 stroke to a million subs. Then they started racking up millions though, and many went family friendly, and the quality of content went way down. The internet. It was better before video. Once it was capable of video, everyone jumped on it. Also rap music. Once the majors bought the minors in 1996, its overall quality went to absolute shit. Wealth. Just the idea of it in general. It seemed like such a cool thing growing up because only the lucky and hardworking got rich back then. Now any idiot who's willing to exploit themselves for views can potentially get wealthy. Not saying there aren't hardworking media influencers out there, but wealth is no longer a status and rich isn't a class anymore. It's a media culture of show-offs and privileged people flaunting how proud they are to have nice expensive things. For people who can't afford their rent even though they are working 2 jobs and paying their way through school, it's a slap in the face if you pose with 10 grand in your hand while leaning against a G-Wagon. We learned not to brag when we were kids because it discourages others and undermines others' struggles, yet we do it without thinking now. It's crazy. Oof. This post comments are cringeworthy. People are allowed to appreciate the same things you appreciate, even if you discovered them first. Instead of being upset about it, you should be happy to have others to share your likes and experiences with. I'd say the exception to this is if people actually physically ruin something. Like someone who was talking about people littering all over a beautiful nature spot. Littering is f***ed up. Man. Close bracket. I won't say ruined, but being a Star Wars nerd. Been reading the EU since the 80s and now everyone and their mama is a Star Wars nerd cause of The Mandalorian. Definitely my favorite camping spots. In the past 7 years there has been an exponential increase in campers. It's annoying because so many of them set up generators and lights to the point where they might as well just stay home. Computers. Oh, for the time before the internet. When we were a rare breed. It's kinda strange experience to have literally the entire world plus dog, almost, become involved in your area of profession, especially one that was quite niche. The average Joe knew zero about when you started. I can't imagine this happening to the geologist, where over a few years literally the entire planet is now playing with rocks every single day. K-pop. It was great until more people started getting into it, and along with new fans came Delulu fans that start fan was for no reason. Now I just listen to the music, but I don't do fandoms much anymore. My home state. So many people have moved there during my lifetime, building all of those hideous McMansion neighborhoods, driving up housing prices, ruining the culture and bringing their politics. I don't even want to say the state because I don't want to give any more of you yahoos any ideas. Fortnite. Because of its popularity, my friends and I stopped for a while and got back on, thinking that it would be a smaller amount of people. But there were just more toxic man babies and 6-10-year-olds thinking they were the shitty just because they bought a John Wick skin. The Elder Scrolls. I actually think Oblivion and Skyrim are good games. But now that the franchise has gone mainstream, we'll never get a gem like Morrowind ever again. At least not from Bethesda. A meme in Reddit's that you post first and then you get 10 upvotes and then there's a guy that reposts it and then they get 5k upvotes and someone comes to the OG post and says it's a repost, it's just a stab in the heart, LMAO. A gorgeous clear pond hidden in Thailand. Went there one year, there were no paved trails and a little sketchy, only the locals knew about it. Went back the next year, they had paved the trail and the dust and debris from them paving it were in the pond, making it murky. My ex and a past acquaintance insisted too much that I play Terraria with them, on separate occasions, and proceeded to reinforce how much I didn't know about the game, while not letting me do anything or learn anything about the mechanics and nuances of the game, and it ended up ruining the whole game for me. Which makes me sad. I might have loved it otherwise. Listening to Greta Van Fleet. I started listening to them when they were a pretty unknown band. When From the Fires was their only release. Then I started hearing them on the radio and people who previously didn't like them or never heard of them were all of a sudden big fans. I liked them at first because they reminded me of Led Zeppelin and other 60s and 70s era bands that I like. But after they released Anthem of the Peaceful Army and they are megastars now, they have almost turned into a boy band and it just killed listening to them for me.